Well, hello, everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I am so excited with my guest today because she has been a recurring guest, and she's also, arguably, in my opinion anyway, one of the most brilliant advocates for brain injury in our community. And not that she's an advocate for brain injury. Let me rephrase that. She's the executive director of the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society, and she knows everything there is to know about brain injury. At least I think she does anyway. Kix Citton is our guest today. Welcome to the program, Kix. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me and that lovely introduction. I will say that I'm, certainly not, I don't know everything about brain injury. There are people who are much smarter and much more knowledgeable. But I'm happy to speak about brain injury at any time, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk with you and the listeners and the viewers today.
Well, one of the things that I love about our conversations is that we're prepared to have some difficult conversations. But before we begin some of that stuff, how about we just refresh our audience and remind them what is the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society? Why is it so important, so valuable in our community? And just give us a little bit of a heads up on the basics of brain injury as a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. So Nanaimo Brain Injury Society has been in the community, operating in the community, serving brain injury survivors and families for over 35 years. We're a local nonprofit organization, a charitable organization that was started by families. So initially, families who met in the hospital, their loved ones going through rehab due to a brain injury, families got together and said, "What now? What do we
Yeah.
do now?" And through those conversations and that initial support, peer support really, grew the organization. So the organization became officially a brain injury organization, head injury organization at that time, but since been updated to the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society. So yeah, we're in the community, for the community, with the community, supported by the community. And we work alongside brain injury survivors and families. So when we talk about brain injury, we talk about acquired brain injury. So according to the World Health Organization definition of acquired brain injury, it means that something has happened to the brain 7 days after the person was born. So we're looking at an illness or an injury that has affected the brain and brain function. So not a disease process or a genetic condition or something like that. Although these neurological conditions certainly have plenty of crossovers, and we are learning more and more about the connection between brain injury and neurological conditions that can show up later on in life as people are living longer. So there's a ton of research happening right now about on the brain. So neuroscience is just really exploding, and Nanaimo Brain Injury Society is really proud to be a research partner in a lot of great research that is happening with local researchers here on the island.
Brain injury in itself, many people experience and often will walk around not knowing that they've had an injury where it's challenged the brain in some way. Can you give us some, how do people injure their brain? It's not just a concussion where someone falls, perhaps. Like what does that look like?
Yeah, so thanks, Kathy. So examples of unacquired brain injury include stroke,
Mhm.
include concussion, and concussion can happen from a motor vehicle accident, workplace accident, falling off your bike, slipping and falling on the ice. An acquired brain injury is also comes under traumatic brain injury, where there's been more traumatic force that has been applied to the brain. So a concussion is known as a mild traumatic brain injury, but certainly we know that the symptoms can be long lasting in certain cases. But traumatic brain injury is more about that moderate to severe brain injury where there has been external force. We can also look at what's called anoxic or hypoxic brain injury. And this occurs when there's a lack of oxygen to the brain. We can think about, someone who has experienced a near drowning, or sometimes a poisoning, the toxic drug crisis. We can talk about that later. And so when someone experiences a brain injury, we can look at how the functionality of the brain has been affected. And this can be physically. We understand that when, especially when it's familiar when someone has a stroke, and you can kind of see, that one side may be affected, that their physical function can be affected. And often the effects are invisible. So when we're looking at the cognitive function, people have difficulty with memory, with following sequential tasks. We look at the mental emotional effects of brain injury. Depression, anxiety come up for people, certainly. We can also look at the fatigue. Fatigue is a huge part of brain injury because your brain governs all the function of your life. And when there's an injury to that organ that is in charge of everything, the brain has to and will try to work extra hard to still get that information to where it needs to get to. So where the Brain Injury Society, Nanaimo Brain Injury Society, steps in is that we work alongside brain injury survivors and families to get them connected with information, resources, supports, programs, both internally and in the community, to help them both manage those symptoms, learning new skills and strategies about how to live a good life after a brain injury, but also promote brain health. So how do we help people understand the bigger picture of what is included in a healthy brain? So all the things that we know are helpful for the body are good for the brain. So making sure that people understand that sleep is important, and exercise, and regulating the nervous system through relieving stress and doing, mindful activities or things that they enjoy, being connected socially. So while we're focused on the brain, we really support the whole person in their lives with their families, because we know that it's not, the brain is not just something outside that you can kind of work on. It's about the whole person. And really, when someone experiences a brain injury, it can have an effect on so many aspects of life, and longer term effects as a chronic lifelong condition.
Well, and let's talk about that, because I recognize that there are a few people that I've met in the community that have brain injuries. And for every person, it's a very different experience. Just like every person has, a different personality, brain injury often will manifest it very differently. I've heard of people that have a very strong sensitivity to light, or they have a strong sensitivity to sound. Is there a rule of thumb on, and does the brain actually ever heal?
Yeah, so the good news is that neuroplasticity, which is a fancy word for learning, for creating new neural pathways and neural connections, can happen until the moment where you're no longer here. We used to think that there was a window of recovery with brain injury that was up to 2 years, and then after that, sorry, but that is no longer the case. We often see the biggest gains in those first 2 years. Someone may go from not being able to walk to walking, or not being able to function or potentially feed themselves to being able to do those things. So we can see the dramatic gains in those first 2 years. However, the brain's ability to change, the brain's ability to find and create those new neural pathways is we've known this for quite a few years, for at least 15 years, that neuroplasticity is happening all the time. And that is available for folks. So when so we can see people in the community that have the different effects of brain injury. And just to kind of circle back to what you're saying, somebody may have the exact same injury, but may experience it very differently because of the variety of factors. And we can see that with any kind of health condition. There's a lot of mitigating factors, and that includes socioeconomic factors, what kind of resources, education, all these, like the baseline health that was there before the injury. What are the coexisting factors that affect the whole person? Because again, whatever is affecting the whole person is also affecting the brain.
So true. It's just so true. And your agency does a number of different things to assist people. Can you share with us, like, what if let's say that I came to you and I've just been diagnosed with a brain injury. I'm feeling very overwhelmed. What could I expect if I gave you a call?
Yeah, so when you're calling the Brain Injury Society, we offer a variety of support. So some people call just for information. How do I get, what are some resources in the community? And we can meet that need right away. For other people, they may need a more extensive an appointment. So we'll bring people in, do an intake appointment, understand what their goals are, what their needs are. And that could be anything from support with finding housing. We don't, as an agency, have housing, but we support people with housing applications, helping them with persons with disability benefits applications, so helping them to gain income. So we really meet the person where they're at and meet them, try to help them meet their goals. We don't have any preconceived notions about what a good life looks like for you. If you were to walk through the door, you're really going to tell us, these are my challenges. This is what's happening for me. There's a lot of education that goes along with brain injury, because people may not even know that a lot of the things that they're experiencing are symptoms of the brain injury.
Yes.
So it's often just kind of helping people to understand that what is going on for them can be a result of this injury. For example, challenges with emotional regulation. The brain is largely an inhibitory organ. It puts the brakes on things.
Yes.
And when the brakes aren't functioning as they were before, or as we would expect, then we can have, what we call flooding, that something comes up and it just becomes overwhelming. People talk to me and they say, I go from 0 to 60 in my anger over nothing. And all of a sudden I'm flying off the handle, and now my partner is all upset, and I just feel like I'm out of control. So helping people to understand that it's not a moral failing. It's not something that they're doing wrong. And a woman came in and she was so overwhelmed by emotion, and she's like, I'm sorry, I can't stop crying. And I'm like, you don't have to apologize.
That's okay. That's
okay.
just okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a word called flooding. So when these emotions come up and the brakes aren't working, this is what can happen, is that we just feel a great sense of overwhelm. So a lot of work that we do, especially for newly affected individuals and their families, is education.
I'm curious a little bit about age ranges, just from the perspective of, there's a lot of stuff going on in our community, and, you and I are no strangers to having difficult conversations and sort of breaking things open to help educate and inspire. We know that the unhoused population and the opioid crisis has caused so much within our communities. And I can only imagine that the stats for brain injury that we can be that can be diagnosed are coming in dribbles and drabs, right? How do we it people don't have a sign on their forehead that says I have a brain injury, right? So what does all of this look like when we know there's so much going on? How do we be better community members?
Yeah, I love that question, Kathy. Thank you for that. Um, I think we don't need to know the diagnosis to be better community members,
Isn't that
uh,
the truth?
to
Hmm.
understand that um, when we are perceiving someone who is um, not in a they're having challenges and struggles, and that can come out in ways that aren't comfortable,
Yeah.
doesn't always feel safe, um, that we can just take a pause and make sure that we are self-regulating. And that's a lot of the work that we do as service providers at the Brain Injury Society, is that when that self-regulation is not available for the person that we're working with, our brains, our self-regulating needs to be turned up for two. So that
Hmm.
regulating has to happen for both those brains.
Yeah.
So when someone is coming forward and there may be some behavior, some cognitive stuff, some mental emotional stuff that we kind of triggers us,
Mhm.
um, there's an opportunity there to take a pause and kind of go, okay, I need to make sure that I'm present. I'm here
Mhm.
with as many of my faculties as possible, because there's a lot going on for this person. We know, the stats tell us that half the homeless population, unhoused population, has an acquired brain injury.
Yeah.
So if we can think of the cascade of events for folks when they experience a brain injury and there aren't those supports in place at the right time, and people aren't able to maintain employment, maintain housing, maintain those supportive relationships,
Mhm.
and really quickly watch that downward spiral. And we can all imagine it. We're all
Absolutely.
we're
Mhm.
all one car
Mhm.
accident, one slip on the ice, one mountain biking accident. We are all on a fine line between brain injury and not brain injury, right? So um, these are things that I think are helpful to keep in mind. Not that we want to go around diagnosing with everybody with a brain
Oh,
injury.
of course not. Of course
Uh,
not.
However, it helps certainly the friends and families to start to make those connections, kind of go,
Mhm.
okay, what I'm seeing is potentially a symptom of the injury, not a personal or moral failing.
Mhm.
It's challenging because it's often the injury is invisible.
It's
And
hard on families as well because a family who wants to be there, they may cognitively know that a partner or a family member has a brain injury, but over time, like any long-term condition, patience wears thin, exhaustion, shows up. And sometimes I think people in their desire to do the right thing, they often forget that the person has a serious condition because for all intent and purpose, they may behave normally in so many ways. So, I can see where there's where there is that issue of long-term support and not really knowing how to, we're all human, we forget sometimes. What would you recommend for a family member to do so that they understand brain injury better? And even actually, before you answer that question, my question to you is, I'm going to take us further back even. What got you excited about learning more about this? What was your passion that made the brain injury or brain injury as a whole such a fantastic and important part of your life?
Yeah, thanks. My career path, my trajectory, the common thread through that is service,
Yes.
service to community, and and in particular, so my background is public health with a focus on seniors
Mhm.
and seniors health, and I became, quite interested in neurological conditions
Mhm.
and those more kind of challenging, invisible disabilities for folks. I
Mhm.
think it's a place where we have fallen short in a lot of ways, like for physical disabilities, we things that are more visible, we've taken a few steps forward in terms of
Mhm.
curb cuts and ramps and these kind of things, but for those of us who experienced diversity, and we call it neurodiversity, or we call it cognitive changes or challenges, it's much more difficult for folks to access supports. So I've
Mhm.
certainly seen that in my family. I have traumatic brain injury and stroke in my family. My parents, my mom passed away of a neurological condition, and my dad is alive. But he had a stroke. So
Yeah.
I've seen that. I've seen the effects of these cognitive changes and the mental and physical changes, along with
Mhm.
impact to the brain. So, in the spirit of creating, healthier, safer, more inclusive communities, I gravitated towards the in this case the brain and these neurological conditions. So so that's of interest to me, and I see incredible resilience.
Mhm.
Sometimes that word gets a little tricky, but the amount of strength and courage and perseverance that folks show is really, to me, I like. I just, yeah, I get quite emotional, and I kind of go, all right, okay,
Yeah.
there's a lot of strength here, and it's not just about seeing the person in their deficits, to acknowledge the challenges and the systemic challenges that are out there, and
Mm.
but also to acknowledge, like, holy crow, here are folks who are just, they're not going to give up, and there's so much contribution that is made from the brain injury community, and I see that especially through our peer support program.
Mhm.
Have peer support volunteers that meet with newly affected folks in the hospital here in Nanaimo, as well as in community, and the generosity, the compassion, the incredible good humor that our peer support volunteers bring forward as living examples of what is available for folks after brain injury. So that to me is the peers are really such incredible leaders in the brain injury community, because they're the ones who are able to speak to the experience, to listen deeply,
Mhm.
to share tips and tricks and strategies that have been hard won. And I'm quite protective of the peer volunteers. I'm just
I
like,
bet you are.
I'm like, don't
I-
with the peers, just get out of the way. Okay? Like, give them the space and the
Yeah.
support, and they show up, and they offer something that someone who doesn't have that experience may be have expertise in whatever kind of, rehab or professional area, which is absolutely
Mhm.
needed, but they can't do the things that the peers do, which is connect from that personal experience.
Exactly. There's nothing stronger than lived experience when it comes to supporting a loved one who is going through something astronomically larger than they expected it would ever be. And identifying people that are willing to share their story is magical. It's truly magical.
Mhm.
If you have just tuned in, thanks for tuning in to CHLY 101.7 FM today. I am Kathy Holmes. I am your host of Act 3, and we are so happy that you join us week after week after week. 'Tis the season coming up for us to pay attention to what's going on in our community. And I, of course, love to share very fabulous things that are happening. And something that's going to be happening pretty darn soon includes with our guest today, Kix at the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society, who's going to jump off a very big bungee through a bungee cord. This is now, Kix, your third jump, right? Why don't you share? Why on earth are you are you trying to get your own brain injury? Like you're jumping, like what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good cause. That's
You're
what
a
I am.
sucker for a good cause. I mean, you couldn't pay me enough to wrap my ankles and put me on a cord and let me fly off while I'm wearing a cool costume. But it looks grand on you, darling. It looks grand on you. Tell us a
Oh
little bit
my
about your
God.
upcoming event.
So we are running our fabulous annual fundraiser, Toss the Boss. So on this year, it's on Friday, October 13th. We're out at beautiful WildPlay Nanaimo. We have over 35 teams signed up, and they are fundraising to meet the minimum $1,000 raised will get them a spot on the bridge for their boss to take a flying leap off the bungee bridge with a bungee cord attached, of course, in support of brain injury survivors and families. So it's a great team building opportunity for employees to come together to throw their support behind their courageous boss. And it could be a manager, it could be a coworker, whoever gets to be boss for the day. And then the team rallies, does the fundraising, and then we get to see that person step up to the edge of the bridge, overlooking 150 feet down to the beautiful
No,
Nanaimo River. I tell you, Kathy, it doesn't get easier.
no, I was going to say that first one. I mean, I think the first one you were wearing you were a dragon or a dinosaur
First one
or
was a unicorn, yeah.
unicorn. That's right. You were a unicorn, and then it was the dragon.
And then it was a dragon. Yeah,
This
so
year,
so
you're dressing as a
bee. I'm a bumblebee.
yay!
And the funny thing is that the first year, the NBIS staff, when we're doing this event, they said, the optic, if we're asking all these other bosses, all these other teams to do this work, the optics are pretty bad if you're not gonna like lead the way. And I said, okay, yeah, find me a unicorn onesie and I'll do it. And they did. So I put on my onesie uh, for moral support, just to have something cozy
No
up.
kidding.
But also because having a one-piece article of clothing is kind of helpful when you dive off a bridge and end up upside down. You
Exactly.
don't want any kind of, I didn't want any kind of fashion malfunctions happening.
That's right. No peep shows for anyone.
No, this isn't the naked bungee.
Exactly.
That is another fabulous event. That's
Yeah,
not
no.
that one. So Friday, October 13th, is when we're going to be out at WildPlay. We already we're over halfway to our fundraising goal. We're over $30,000 that teams have raised, which is amazing. We've got a week to go. I know that we're going to hit that goal. There's just incredible support from the community and our sponsors. And of course, we're just super excited to be out at WildPlay Nanaimo. It's such a gem of a place in that community. And teams are invited to come out and do some team building. There's an adventure course and axe throwing and all sorts of great activities that WildPlay is offering for 50% off the fee for teams who are coming for the day. So encourage you to come out, do some team building, and then pitch their boss off the bridge with the highlight of the day being able to support brain injury survivors and families.
So tell me, how long does it take to actually get down from from the minute they pitch you over, how long are you in midair?
Way too long. Honestly. So the first time I jumped, and the bridge crew are amazing. Like the jump master, so like super super calm. He's telling me, Steve, the jump master, he's like, just look at that tree. And all you're gonna do is follow that tree all the way down. You're just gonna fall. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. And some people can just go for it. They just fly out the bridge, swan dive. Not me. I have such a strong biological imperative to not fall off of high places. So anyways, I get a little nudge and then gravity takes over. So the first time I had my eyes open, which was an experience. Because you see the whole thing, your life.
Like, no kidding, right? Like, oh my God.
And then you end up down, and then you bounce back up and do it again because, like you're still falling. So the second time I said, that's it. I don't need to see anything. I'm going to close my eyes. But honestly, Kathy, like I have my eyes closed and all I'm thinking is like, I'm still falling.
Exactly.
I'm still falling. Like, when does this end?
No doubt. Oh my gosh, it must be the longest because it's not all that long in time, but it must feel like an eternity.
It's seconds. Like gravity takes over. You just go. You're done. You're done. There's no turning back. But the moment was just like forever. And
was it freeing at all? Like at any point, was it freeing or just terrifying?
It is a beautiful view from the platform, from the little
where you get the little shove?
Like a little, well, no, at the bottom of the river, when they lower you down and you feel like safe at the bottom, looking back up at the bungee bridge when you're on your little they have a little boat, not a little boat, a little platform that they float out and they bring you down and you just get to lay there and all the adrenaline and all the stuff and you just that you survived and that's the best moment for me.
No kidding.
And it's over. I'm like, oh my God, it's like that is the best. But for some folks, it's an absolute thrill, like incredible. The common experience is really that people are willing to take the challenge because they're here to support brain injury survivors and families.
Yeah.
And that kind of understanding that brain injury survivors and families do incredibly challenging things every day.
Every single day.
Just going to the grocery store can be incredibly challenging, as you mentioned earlier, like the sensitivity to light, the fatigue, just being able to do these things that a lot of us take for granted. It's very challenging. So part of for me, part of the bungee jump is to kind of to embrace that vulnerability and say this isn't easy, and to also say that we can do hard things, we can do challenging things with the support of community, with the support of friends and family. We can face these challenges together. So that's also at the heart of Toss the Boss, is coming together, doing something incredibly challenging, and knowing that we are doing this in service to community.
And in service to understanding what could be something, just sort of understanding that challenge from your own fear and from your own level, I would imagine puts the perspective, when you're actually working with participants, to say, I can't imagine what you're going through. It's different from what I've gone through for sure. But you're doing things that are so brave every single day, and acknowledging that by doing something brave yourself in a way that you probably never saw yourself doing a few years ago.
No, and of course we're symbolically speaking. Like, I'm not comparing bungee jumping to having a brain injury.
Hey, totally.
Not at all.
Entirely. Let's be very clear. This is symbolically speaking, of course.
Yes.
Of course, of course. For sure.
However, as I said, bungee jumping is not my favorite thing. But
you're doing it with such grace, and this year in a bee costume.
In a bee. So, back to the costumes. So each costume has had wings. So the unicorn, it was actually like a Pegasus, like Pegacorn thing, the dragon, and the bee has little tiny wings. And I remember learning, like, way, way, way back, that bees, if we think about the size of a bee and the size of their wings, they actually shouldn't be able to fly if we look at the physics of a bee. But somehow, magically, probably scientifically, I know there's science behind that, that bees can do this impossible thing.
Yes.
So that's also the symbolism for me with wearing the bee costume for Toss the Boss, is that we can do things that are seemingly impossible, and holding on to that kind of, that vision, that hope for a future where brain health and wellness is accessible and available to everyone. That's the vision of Nanaimo Brain Injury Society. So we are working towards that every day, and we need to grow in order to meet the needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The needs are exponentially getting larger and larger as we, as things go by. I'm curious, Kix, is there an age or a population or is there a higher number in some areas than in others? And if so, what does that look like potentially? Is there some nationalities even or that are maybe represented in brain injury?
Yeah, so if we, it's interesting to think about statistics and how things get counted and who gets counted and all these kind of things. Unfortunately, the statistics for brain injury are quite limited. We rely on the Center for Disease Control. We rely on American statistics because we're not tracking the same kind of health statistics in Canada. We know that men between the ages of 15 and 35 are at higher risk, higher incidence of brain injury. And we can look at higher risk activities as related to brain injury, and we can kind of see that connection.
So are you talking about sports, for example, like football injuries or hockey, or the more, robust games?
Yeah, and we also can see just certain behaviors that are higher risk as well.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of going like, really? Really?
Yeah, and I'm careful on how it's coming out. I'm trying to be quite respectful, but
I
I
know.
have a teenager. Well, he's not a teenager anymore. By God, he's made me a grandmother of my fourth grandchild is due in
Oh,
February.
congratulations.
Oh, thank you, love. But like he's definitely, there was an age where, yeah, that testosterone part,
Whatever it is, whatever we
whatever.
kind of relate that conditioning that seems to land with males that connects that higher risk behavior, and certainly greater contact sports and these kind of things, but also non-sport activities. But we can also look at the statistics as related to intimate partner violence.
Yes.
And that is something that NBIS is committed to shining the light on and addressing the connection between intimate partner violence and brain injury. Because we know that 1 in 3 women across Canada experience intimate partner violence. And the statistics that have come out around concussion as related to assault and strangulation, because the mechanism of the assault is highly correlated, highly connected with brain injury. So as I mentioned, strangulation, so lack of oxygen to the brain. Yeah. So, but if we just look at concussion, for every one NHL hockey player that experiences a concussion, there's 7,000 women across Canada with the same injury caused by intimate partner violence. There's an incredible video that came out with Trevor Linden and sponsored to the YWCA that really shone a light on, here is this hockey player talking about this concussion and, saying, I don't know what happened. The guy came from the back. All of a sudden, I was on the floor looking up. And it actually was not him. He wasn't speaking about his concussion. It shifts to a woman and her experience. Oh. Very, very powerful to think about. To think about that experience and the wraparound supports that we see are provided, especially for athletes, and rightly so, and professional athletes. We see the amount of support that is needed in order for someone to recover from a concussion, multiple concussions, in order to function and get back to their life. There's a huge amount of support that is needed if we want to see this person not only survive but thrive. And the amount of resources and money and that is required. And then we think about folks who experience intimate partner violence, experiencing the same injury, a brain injury, a concussion, and all the symptoms that go along with that. Difficulty with memory, with fatigue, with speech, with keeping things organized, light sensitivity, all those things. And then they are in potentially an unsafe home, needing to keep their kids safe, needing to, make decisions that are critical to their life. And they're doing all this with a brain injury. Yeah. So we're really committed to shining a light on intimate partner violence and brain injury. We've done a lot of education and work with our partners in transition houses, folks who work in that area, because we are also learning how to have those conversations. Having a conversation about a brain injury that is caused by intimate partner violence is very different than having a conversation with someone who has a brain injury as related to a mountain biking accident.
Totally.
That person is not necessarily at risk of another brain injury unless they hop back on their bike. But we need to talk about and understand safety planning. When we're talking about intimate partner violence, we need to talk about the implications that a brain injury can be weaponized in family court against someone, which can be used to say that they can't function, they can't handle their kids, because they have a brain injury. So the complexity around those conversations is something that is a learning edge for us within the brain injury community, and we're learning more and more, and we need to learn more and more how to have those conversations, how to best support people. But we're also committed to shining the light for people who work directly with folks who are fleeing violence, to help them understand that, when someone is coming into your office and they've experienced these assaults or these multiple incidents, that the fact is, that they may not remember being the appointment, and they may not be able to show up to these appointments, or the lights in your office may be really affecting how they're able to be there. So what kind of scenarios, what kind of situations are we creating for folks to be able to best access the services that they require in order to not only address the violence, but also to address the invisible injury that they may be dealing with, in terms of the concussion or anoxic brain injury, that lack of oxygen to the brain.
Well, and we also, I know we touched a few minutes ago on the unhoused population, but an alarming number of unhoused are women who are being assaulted on the streets, have nowhere to go, repeatedly experiencing violence, and the poison drug supply on top of it. And so, then our complexity becomes even more so. Yeah.
And I think this is the important piece, is that we really need to address the stigma that is associated with folks who are unhoused, with folks who are substance users, with all these different neighbors and community members who are just trying to deal with the different challenges in their lives as best as they can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you see a big difference? I'm sorry to cut you off there. I didn't mean to. But I know that COVID is not over, obviously. There's a resurgence of it happening once again. However, we've had somewhat of a reprieve over the last few months. And so I'm curious, did you see a significant, a little bit of time has passed, but did you see a significant change in the amount of people going through your door immediately after the major parts of COVID? Or did they really just sort of stay the same despite and in spite of COVID? Was there a more awareness?
What we saw was the spike in the mental health needs of folks. Because, prior to COVID, folks who had regular schedules, they were able to get their social needs met, they were able to access services. It was being able to have those regular things in your life that make a good life and have it accessible. People who were able to manage and have all those pieces in place. COVID disrupted that. So after COVID, and we continue to see the ripple effects, not only in the incredible overdose toxic drug crisis that has just it continues to increase, the toxic the deaths that's related to toxic drug supply. We're seeing that those numbers, as the deaths increase We also have to keep in mind that non-fatal overdoses are increasing as well.
Right.
We're talking about non-fatal overdose, that someone who has overdosed and has stopped breathing for a certain amount of time, that they are at higher risk of brain injury. Lack of oxygen to the brain is called, or reduced oxygen is called anoxic or hypoxic brain injury. So we are seeing tidal waves of brain injury. And we certainly want to address the overdose deaths, of course, that needs to stop. But we also need to recognize the walking wounded, the brain injury that is associated with people who have experienced multiple overdoses and have survived. So I think you're talking about that complexity. I think we really need to understand that there's not just one piece and that's going to solve all of it. And I'm sure, and I'm certainly, certainly no one is proposing a silver bullet.
No, for sure. Absolutely.
However, when there are policies and practices that increase stigma, increase isolation, drive people to not be able to access supports, then we know that that is going to potentially cause more harm. And we certainly saw that with what happened with COVID, when people are isolated and that they're not connected and they're not able to get connected in community, and they don't have that the supports that are needed to address those challenges, that we are seeing the incredible ripple effects of the harm.
What can we do though, Kix? How can community show up in a way that is part of the solution rather than contributing to the problems?
Yeah. I think relationships are key.
Yeah.
It's harder to hate someone or to dehumanize someone when we have a relationship. It's not necessarily that we need to open our doors and invite everybody in, and like, I'm not proposing that.
No, of course.
However, there is a difference when we are able to meet people as people first, and understand that there may be things that come along with that person that we may not feel comfortable around or agree with, but there is a person there first. So I think understanding our own biases, understanding our own conditions, understanding how our own identity makes us see the world in a certain way, and that creates certain attractions to certain things and certain aversions to certain things. That understanding that that's what I bring to the table, and that can create a distance, a wall. It creates a certain filter that someone needs to communicate through. So I'm hearing and seeing things not as the world is, but how I am. And so in our communities, certainly bringing that kind of awareness to say, oh, okay, I see it from this perspective, and it's not necessarily how that person sees things or thinks about things, but is there a way to up the self-regulation, up our ability to connect, up our ability to bring awareness to a situation? Because I don't know what the answers are, but I know that I am better able to respond from a place of compassion, of kindness, of calmness, when I'm not just caught in my own ideas about who somebody is and how they should act and why they're like that, and then piling on judgment and stigma and all the things around that. So certainly when it comes to brain injury, that's something that I've seen is helpful in my life with my own family members, and it seems to be helpful when someone comes through the door, that they're welcomed in to help us understand what's going on.
Absolutely. And I also think really to sort of look at every individual from the perspective of trauma informed, knowing that all of us have baggage, all of us have life experiences. We don't necessarily know what everybody's story is, but we can, with that compassion, the lens of compassion, we can assume that people have experienced something in their lives just by being human, and to be open to that. We're just about at the end of the program. I hate it when we're at the end of the program because I truly could talk to you like hours and hours and pull. Like it's always so fascinating to me, and it's always so interesting. And I just truly love what it is that you do in community. And I know that the community values and appreciates what it is that the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society does. So within, like, because I do want to get to the life lesson here, I love that part of my show is important to me, but how do people get more information? How do people reach you? How do people see you wearing your pretty bee costume? And like, let's give those details one more time, shall we?
Yeah, so NBIS.ca is our website. That's where you'll see all of our programs and services. The phone numbers are there. Our direct line. I know some people don't access the website, but I'll say this very slowly. It's 250-753-5600. And I'm sure you can play that back. But NBIS.ca is our website. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so follow us on the socials. We're going to be out at WildPlay on Friday the 13th, October 13th. Yes, from 2 until 6 p.m. I'm going to be jumping in my little bee costume at 2 p.m. I'm the first one to get pitched off.
Whoa! So don't be late, everybody. Get to
Lucky
WildPlay at 2
me.
o'clock.
At 2 o'clock.
You can celebrate afterwards because you will have gotten it over with.
Yes, and we're going to have a barbecue. We'll have information there. We're going to be welcoming local teams, like incredible businesses that are showing up, construction businesses. We have provincial businesses. We have tiny little, entrepreneurial businesses. Like, it's incredible, the teams that are showing up. So we really want to show the support for the businesses and organizations that are raising money for the Brain Injury Society. We'll have some peer volunteers out there, folks from the brain injury community that are going to be coming out as well. So it really is a community event. We'll have NBIS staff and volunteers, and it's always been a bit of a kind of a festival experience, celebration. So hopefully the weather's good. But we will have tents and things out there. So come on out to beautiful WildPlay. I can't say enough about that location. I just love being above the Nanaimo River. It's a beautiful view from the top of the bridge.
Fantastic. And it'll be are you going to have your eyes open or closed this time, do you think?
I don't know. I really, it's like, it's a coin toss. Because I don't know which one's better. I think they'll just like automatically do something with them. I'm gonna stop strategizing. This is not about strategy.
Sometimes it's just about being in the moment. It's been a great visit with you, Kix. Thanks so much for being on the program today. I surely appreciate it. I know that our guests who are listening right now, whether you're listening to us on YouTube or whether you're watching us on Shaw or however you're watching Act 3, we appreciate it so much when you continue to listen to and watch our program, especially when we have such great people like Kix on board with us. Kix, you have less than 1 minute to say, if you could do the takeaway, what would it be for you? What would you want our community to know?
Be here now.
Yes. Yay! She's going to be there and you're going to be there too. Thanks again, Kix. Have yourself a great day, everybody. We'll
Thank
see you next time.
thank you
Oh,
so much, Kathy.
it's such a pleasure, Kix. Thanks so much for you as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Act 3.